Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rebecca Rear, Director of Climate Policy and Justice for Maryland LCV. We're so glad you all could join us to speak to the power of our community and to your commitment to the environmental causes that affect us all. Our goal with these Friday Digests is to provide you with information, tools, and resources to be informed and active advocates. We also want the agenda for these virtual meetings to be driven by your interests and needs. So please let us know what you want to hear. The easiest way to provide this information is to fill out the survey you'll receive at the end of the session. We read them, they don't just go into the void, so make sure you fill it out. As you join, please type your name into the chat and tell us where you are. And as we move through the half hour we have together today, please type your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can to help shape today's conversation. And thanks to those of you who submitted questions ahead of time. We have a few of those already woven into our conversation today. And we have a wonderful guest joining us today, Jennifer Bevan-Dangel, Deputy Director of Economic Action Maryland Fund. And we'll be doing a deep dive on one bill, HB1 SB2, which focuses on utility accountability and ratepayer protections. And for Maryland LCV, this bill falls under our Power Maryland Forward framework. A lot of folks have reached out to us asking us, what's the bill number for Power Maryland Forward? Because we have it listed as on our website as a priority for the 2026 session. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity to clarify. Power Maryland Forward is a framework and a campaign. Maryland LCV is working to power Maryland forward, supporting energy affordability through deployment of solar and storage, defense against more fossil fuels and unchecked utility profits, while getting the most out of the electricity grid we have. There's a lot of work in the regulatory space we're doing on this. For example, implementation of last year's Next Generation Energy Act and the dockets that opened up at the Public Service Commission. And there are a number of bills we're supporting this session through this lens, including the one we're going to do a deep dive on today that builds those ratepayer protections through reasonable utility accountability measures. So let's get started. Jennifer, you and I first met, like 10 years ago, I think, maybe more, when we were both serving on the state's Environmental Justice Commission, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a long time working in similar circles together.
That's right. And it's so awesome to see you now in this role in Economic Action Maryland Fund. And, we've collaborated a bit over the last year on the intersection of climate and economic justice on things like, offering insurance or not in more and more flood-prone areas, for example. And we're finding ourselves working together a lot this session because energy affordability is the topic on everyone's minds. And so today we're going to dig in on HB1, that's Delegate Crosby in the House, and SB2, Senator Hester. So can you start just by giving us a general overview of this proposed legislation?
Absolutely. And just really quickly, Economic Action Maryland Fund works for economic justice and consumer protection. We do both direct service through our housing services advocacy and our older adult outreach. And we also do a suite of policy work, research, and advocacy around issues like this, whether it's energy or grocery prices, those, top of mind kitchen table issues. And when we surveyed our members this past winter, energy prices were the primary concern. So this is an incredibly timely and incredibly relevant piece of legislation for our members as it is for yours. The bill before us, and it's important to note, it's already passed the House and it was amended. So when we're talking about the bill, there's sort of two slightly different versions. But this bill would prohibit utility companies from charging ratepayers for basically excessive executive compensation. And the amendments don't make it, so different. What it boils down to is if you want to pay your executives over $250,000, that needs to come out of the shareholders, not the ratepayers' pockets. So it's really a fairness and a ratepayer savings bill all in one.
Got it. And is this brand new? Is this a new bill this year? Was it introduced last year?
Yeah, it's really important to keep in mind that this is part of sort of a suite of reforms that we need to bring utility rates back down. So last year, the legislature heard HB 960, the Ratepayer Freedom Act, That was introduced by Delegate Andre Johnson. Pieces of it were passed in the Next Generation Energy Act, which was like the big bill that
The
you
story
all
of
were
so many
intimately
other, yeah.
involved in.
Got it, got it,
So
got it.
last year they started chipping away at this by saying you can't charge private jets, you can't charge trade associations to ratepayers, that those really aren't legitimate expenses to pass on to ratepayers. And this builds on that framework by now saying, excessive executive compensation is another piece that ratepayers shouldn't be on the hook for.
Got it. And you mentioned trade associations. We got a question from Reed in as part of our registration process for this Friday Digest episode. Can we or have we already made it illegal for utilities to charge lobbying expenses to ratepayers?
It's a really good question. Technically, they cannot charge lobbying expenses. Unfortunately, the definition of lobbying expenses is somewhat narrow. So we would love to have seen there were pieces in that bill last year that would have broadened the definition to include sort of schmoozing and all the sort of education work that they call not lobbying, even though it's directed at elected officials. So we'd love to see that
Mm.
definition expanded, but at least the core lobbying is prohibited. And there is a bill this year that would prohibit campaign finance donations by these entities, by these utility companies. So even though campaign donations can't be charged to ratepayers, that would also help sort of with this package of guardrails that we're seeing get erected here.
So, you already mentioned it passed the House today, right? So, that's why these conversations are so important to have weekly because this stuff changes, week to week, day to day. So, talk a little bit in the process. Where are we? So the House passed HB1 but amended it. The Senate had a hearing yesterday on SB2. What's the what's the process? What happens next?
Yeah, great question. And it's wild that we're seeing so much movement on so many bills this early in session. I mean, it's barely February, so it's very exciting to see that the speaker is really getting the session started and charging forward with her priorities. So yes, so the House picked up the bill and they did amend it. Basically, what they did was they streamlined it. There was a lot of questions over, well, who's a supervisor? Who's a, you know, who would fall under this term? Who would fall under that term? And as introduced, the bill treated bonuses differently than executive compensation. So they streamlined it and they just said if you're making more than effectively $250,000, anything over that, you can receive it, but it cannot be charged to the ratepayers. So they basically just simplified the structure of the bill somewhat. And that bill will now head to the Senate. The Senate committee has heard the bill, as you said, just yesterday. We are seeing the committees in the Senate starting to vote, starting to move bills out. So it could be in the next week or two that we see the bill come out of the Senate committee and move to the floor. Of course, if everyone here is excited about this legislation, your calls, your actions, I know you get action alerts from LCV. Please, we have to be very vocal about this. There's a lot of high profile bills and a lot of energy bills. So we don't want the Senate to think, well, we can sit on this one. We really want to keep that energy moving forward. And then, of course, if a bill passes the House, it still has to pass the Senate. If the Senate bill passes the Senate, it still has to pass the House. So we have a long 67 days left in session for this to get all the way across the finish line.
Because it's the Senate would have to, for it to move the fastest, basically the Senate would have to adopt the same amendments. Like SB2 could move out in the same posture as HB1 past the House, in which case it'd be relatively simple, but we don't know yet whether that'll happen.
Yes. And we
Okay.
often see little differences of opinion between the two chambers. So we're always prepared for conference or amendments at the final hour.
You mentioned, it's interesting to see so many things move so quickly. But this is HB1.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be HB1?
It definitely sends the message that this is a priority for House leadership. I don't believe that they sit up all night ordering the bills in order of their absolute favorites, but they certainly, when they're getting the bills, into printing and getting them numbered, there are certainly ones that have a higher priority for the speaker, for leadership, and being number one or even number two does show that this really matters to certainly the speaker and hopefully also to the Senate president.
And one thing you mentioned earlier that I really do want to pick up on is that this bill in no way caps executive pay, full stop. It simply prevents those costs being passed on to ratepayers when a supervisor level position or above makes more than 110% of what the Public Service Commission chair makes. Is that right? That's where you got the 250,000 number.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, the biggest sort of misconception that we're fighting. It definitely came out in the Senate hearing where the
Hmm.
senators seem to be stuck on this point, and it did come up in the House votes, especially in the subcommittee votes, where BG&E and Exelon are saying, oh, we won't be able to attract talent. We won't be able to retain talent. We have to be able to pay our people more. No one's saying that they can't. We're just
Right.
saying that when we have clients who are having to choose between their utility bill and their medications, choosing between their utility bill and their groceries, that to charge someone who is living paycheck to paycheck or, month to month for over $250,000 of salary for a high level executive, it's so grossly unfair that it just should not be allowed to occur. And so it really is just who should pay that very high salary. Should it be us or should it be the shareholders? And it's important to note the ratepayers would still be on the hook for the first, basically 250,000. It's just the dollar after that or every other dollar after that that the shareholders need to be responsible for. And BG&E profits, Exelon profits have been skyrocketing. So
Hmm.
there clearly is room in their profit margins to accommodate some of these fees that otherwise the ratepayers are on the hook for.
Yeah, and the unique thing about a utility, I mean, in Maryland, it's a regulated monopoly, right? So, like, there's a
Exactly.
little bit of I heard in the Senate hearing yesterday, a lot of, we need to be able to pay market rate. That the Exelon CEO making $14 million, is pretty standard for a private company of that size. But the point is, but one of the points I didn't hear, and I was thinking, how when you are giving a speech or something, and then later you realize all the things you should have said. This is one of the things I was thinking about yesterday was that, um, uh, but it's not paying. It's not a market. It's a regulated monopoly. It's not the same as trying to meet market rate.
Absolutely. There were some really good arguments made, especially in the House subcommittee voting sessions.
Mm.
First, that to argue that people making under $250,000 don't have talent.
Yeah,
We have a lot
I
of
took.
state employees who are making a pittance of that amount of money. And Delegate Baylor was the one who
Yeah.
said this. And to imply that somehow they're not talented or they're less worthy because their salary is lower. People take jobs for the mission sometimes. And so it does send the wrong message to say that, oh, if we can't afford to pay this, who are we going to get stuck with? But then
Yeah.
also, this is such a highly regulated industry. This is not a high risk industry. And there will be
Mm.
conversations about what the rate of return should be for their investments. This is
Mm.
probably one of the safest industries imaginable because they are guaranteed to make their money back and they are guaranteed a pretty set percentage of return on that money.
Yeah.
So to argue that they can't function unless they have these salaries does feel somewhat disingenuous. But again, they can pay it. The ratepayers
It
shouldn't.
just can't. Yeah, it shouldn't fall it shouldn't be in our reflected in our bills.
Exactly.
Um, so you mentioned a little bit. You talk to folks you serve, and that energy bills are the thing that they're most concerned about. Can you talk a little bit about what is the actual impact if we pass this bill? What is that going to look like for somebody's utility bill?
Absolutely. And we don't want to oversell that, you'll wake up tomorrow and your energy bill is going to be cut in half, right? This is one of many reforms we need to see move forward around data
Hmm.
centers, around rate of return, reforming Stride. I know that LCV, you have a package of bills. This is just a piece of that package. But by BG&E's own analysis in the written testimony, for a household using about 850 kilowatt hours, the expected savings are just under $2 a month. Now, I know I live in an old leaky house, and all the energy advocates would probably hate me. Our energy bill is pretty high, but my house uses about 2,000 kilowatt hours. So my savings would be closer to $5, $6 a month. So we're definitely talking about savings of between two to, five or six or more, again, depending on your energy usage a month. And that adds up to a bag of essential groceries, a week's worth of essential groceries for a household. These are not insignificant savings when you stop and think about how on the margins so many Marylanders are right now. We hear it from our clients. We have a lot of older adult clients on fixed incomes. $2 a month, $5 a month would be very significant for them. That's a prescription if they have insurance helping bring the cost of that prescription down. So it's very cavalier, and we heard this again in that House subcommittee debate. It's very cavalier to say, oh, it's just $2 to our clients and, to myself. That's a lot of money. That's money that could be spent on something else.
Yeah, no, I think, and that's an important, but it's important. All of those points are important, but really this is part of a suite of,
Yeah.
There's sort of like, we can look at categories of ways that we're trying to address energy affordability. This is definitely in the utility accountability portfolio. And that rate of return piece is going to be really important. And the way that utilities can build infrastructure, because that's what they're guaranteed that return on, is a big part of this conversation. How are you, and I really truly appreciate not overselling, one bill being the solution. I think that's what people are desiring because the problem is so dire right now. But there isn't, they're taken together. These are sort of the things that can really help. And this one will have a real impact on your bill. And it is an important message as well, I think, to utilities that, it's a new day, perhaps, and folks are watching.
And it's a message to Marylanders. We have
Mm,
the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, the Governor, all in alignment that this needs to be the year where we focus on affordability.
yep.
Well, when Marylanders are struggling and on incredibly constrained incomes, some of our clients are making 25,000 a year. For them to feel like they're having to help pay for the salary of someone making 10 times that is very offensive. And
Mm,
so it really does send the message that we understand just how bad things are, and we realize there needs to be more parity. And it's important to keep in mind Maryland is not unique in looking at this. There's several
yep.
states in the Midwest where the regulatory entity is actually debating the same question of executive compensation and whether ratepayers, should not be on the hook for it. And there's other industries, especially insurance, where we've seen CEO pay that can be passed to
Mm.
ratepayers be capped by the regulatory body or by the state, like in California. So this is a very lively conversation. This is not somewhere where Maryland is, shockingly out in the lead.
And that's always, we look at Maryland wanting to be in the lead on some things and wanting to sort of follow the pack on others. And so it's always helpful to know when other states have done this type of work.
I always
So,
joke Maryland was the seventh state to get formed to be admitted into
mm,
the union, and we're the seventh state to pass most bills. Like there's something deep in our bones about being seventh. So we never like to be all the way out in front, but we like to be among the front runners.
you mentioned earlier it's really important for folks to weigh in.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage folks. Maryland LCV does have an action alert for this. Please fill it out. I think we can get that. Thank you. We can get it in the chat. So click on that and sign our action alert and have make sure you're voicing your support on this one. We got a couple questions. Some of them are directly relevant. Some of them have some are relevant sort of to this bigger question on energy affordability. And I think maybe between the two of us, we could answer them. There was a question from Doug about under current law, do all ratepayers get charged more when data centers increase electric power demand, or do the data centers pay the full cost?
Yeah. And this is where it gets super complicated. The short answer is we are paying for the cost of those data centers. That's the short answer. And I know there were some questions about just why are bills so high. To try to answer it simply, and it's a very complicated answer, on your bill you see two things. You see the supply charge and you see the distribution charge. The supply charge is set at the kind of federal level, the regional level, and excuse me, that's based on how much energy the regional body thinks is going to be used. So that's where the data centers really are driving up the price. When the data centers come in and put in permit requests, that regional oversight body says, oh my gosh, we need so much power. And the regional body tends to discount things like renewable energy, community solar. So there's this drive up of energy rates of that supply cost that's sort of inflated, overly inflated because of decisions being made at that regional level. On the distribution side, that's where Maryland regulates it through the PSC. That distribution side is things like our infrastructure, and what you can charge to ratepayers. So that's where this bill falls, and that's where reforms like reforming Stride. Right now, if BG&E builds new infrastructure, they have a guaranteed rate of return of 9 to 11%, and they bill that to consumers over 30 years. So you're paying that and locked into it for many years to come. If we could bring that price down, A, it would incentivize replacing and repairing over building new, which is obviously better for the environment, but it would also tremendously save ratepayers. So there's work that could be done sort of on both sides here in Maryland to bring down both of those costs.
Yeah, so that got two of those questions, right? The data center one, and then this other question that Kathleen had posed about what's the real reason for utility rates, your utility bills going up, and there isn't one. In the same way that there is no one solution, there's one answer to why the bills have gone up. The bills are going up for on the distribution side and the supply side. The demand, the data center piece of it, that oversight body you mentioned, PJM, our grid. A couple of solutions in that realm. It's interesting. A data center might look at a couple different places and they might say, we might want to build in Maryland. We might want to build in Virginia. Maybe we'll build in Ohio, maybe Pennsylvania. And they're kind of assessing it. And if they're assessing it and sending signals or even putting in potentially permit applications, or, these initial inquiries in more than one place, sometimes that anticipated demand will get double counted. And we get charged for that because our grid is designed to be able to provide the energy we need at peak demand. We are not always at, now listen, the last week or two with this snowstorm and the really, really cold temperatures we've been experiencing, we see really high demand. So it's important that design has benefits, right, to meet the peak demand. However, if the potential peak demand is being inflated because data centers are kind of scoping out more than one location at a time, we can get charged in ways that we shouldn't. And so there are state initiatives to prevent some of that double counting, which will be really important. And again, doing our job as sort of watchdogging and asking for good governance and decision making at that regional grid level at PJM. And so that's one example. I mean, and there's more examples of proposals this session to try to ask data centers to put in some demand response controls to bring some of that energy generation so we aren't charged for it. There's a lot of proposals being considered in front of the legislature right now, and you'll hear about them on future episodes. So stay tuned. I think that was a lot of the questions that we're getting in. I do, anything else from your perspective that we missed on HB1 or SB2 or that folks think should stay tuned for?
Definitely, I mean, we've said it a few times, but definitely take that action alert. Please be reaching out to your senators in particular. Let's make sure we keep the momentum moving forward. And because this is just the first of several bills, I think staying in touch with your inbox or with the staff, however you keep on top of these issues, is incredibly important. And if you're interested in more of the ratepayer and sort of consumer side, you can go to econaction.org and see some of the other bills that we're tracking, which again are all sort of kitchen table, bring those
Mm.
prices down legislation.
That's awesome. Well, before folks go, I just want to make sure we thank you, Jennifer, for joining us today and the partnership, the ongoing partnership we have working together more and more on these issues as sort of the, energy affordability, clean energy, utility accountability work is really working together. So appreciate you taking the time today to speak with us about this important initiative and all the work that you all do. Um, and before folks go, a few updates from Maryland LCV so you don't miss them. Yesterday we had our second. It is also, we have a lot going on with the session, but it is also an election year, and we had our second wave of announcements for the 2026 election cycle. You can see those names on Facebook and on our website. So check out. Make sure you're following us on various social media accounts. And sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss any of these updates in real time. Big fun announcement next week on Friday Digest. We're excited to host speaker Jocelyn Pena-Melnick. So please tune in same time next week, every Friday at this time. So you can just mark your calendar, bring your lunch. And then February 16th, we have our second annual lobby day. So stay tuned for more. And then finally, circle your calendars. Coming up on April 30th, we'll be hosting our Green Drinks in Annapolis. So make sure you sign up for that. We're hoping to host one at the end of January, but the weather did not cooperate. Didn't get our memo about green drinks. And so we'll be hosting Green Drinks on April 30th, hoping for a little springtime weather to host Green Drinks then. So I think that's all we have for this week. I just want to thank everybody. Thank you again, Jennifer. Thanks for all the work that you do. Sign up for the Action Alert, HB1, SB2, and stay tuned for lots more coming from us for a busy session. Thanks, everybody.